So if I'm like, 6 months in and I'm like, you know what? We're doing really well with fulfillment. Like we're getting these people in. Like I want to, this next 6 months, these next 2 quarters, I want to double that, right? I want to double that. So how do we do that? Well, you can easily just spend additional $1,000 on those ads, right? Still do everything else the same, and you're going to hit that goal, right? So you're able to start being able to create growth and have realistic goal setting because you've just unlocked new skill sets that you didn't have before, right? But here's the mindset that we have to understand. If you're not willing to outsource and delegate those small tasks that we talked about in number 3, you're never going to be able to focus on like understanding that chessboard of your numbers, right? Because I wasn't able to really grow until I put my team in place and really could just focus on marketing and selling people into my program.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit.
What is up, guys? It is Coach Chris, and I would like to welcome you to another episode of the Coach to CEO podcast. Today, I'm going to be teaching you 5 things I didn't know about running a gym and had to find out the hard way. All right, so these are some lessons that I had to learn to be a little bit better at doing what I did in the gym, because most of us that are into the gym business, we really love the training, right? We really love working with people, the relationships, and being able to see people transform, right? That's why we got into training. That's why we got into helping people. But let's be real, a lot of us weren't the best at business, right? A lot of us, and if you're getting ready to start one, maybe you don't know what things you need to know when you're running a business, right? So when I first got started, I just was a personal trainer trying to pick up clients and make money, put some dollars in my pocket, pay my bills, and just live a good life, right? But as I started to grow, I was already starting to see the impact, no pun intended, that impact was really having on people's lives and the impact that it was having in the community that I was serving. So it was really important for me to grow as my business grew, right? And I didn't go to a business school, right? I didn't take business classes in college. The most practical lessons, or I guess you could say education, that I had was entrepreneurship in high school. So I think I always knew that I wanted to run a business. It was kind of always in my blood, but I never really got any formal training around the topic, right? And it wasn't until I was already in my business and operating, that's when I actually started to read books, right? Hire mentors and coaches and really get around people that were a lot smarter than me, right? So I've realized that early on, you got to check your ego at the door. And there's a lot of things that I didn't know. And still to this day, there's a lot of things that I'm still learning as I go. And I think that's one of the most important things that I can stress on this podcast is that we have to have that growth mindset, right? We have to have that mindset that we're going to continually evolve into the best version of ourselves. And the version that you're at right now is nowhere even near where you're going to be, right? And I can see that in 13 years of progressions of, running my gym. There was a lot of the time when I first got started, like I just was a total meathead, right? And I just cared about lifting heavy weights, and I just wanted everyone in my gym to lift heavy weights. And, we kind of ran it, part of my French, but we kind of ran my gym like a little bit of a shit show in the beginning, right? But it was working. And the reason why it was working is because I was all in, right? That's the one thing that I will say is that you can't run a gym without being all in. You can't be, and not just all into training, right? You have to be all into helping people. So that was the one thing that did carry me to success long enough to be able to learn some of the lessons that I'm going to talk about here in today's podcast, was that I always had passion, right? And I was very excited, enthusiastic about helping other people achieve their goals, right? I wanted to see them deadlift the most weight. I wanted to see them get faster. I wanted to see them be more conditioned. And I truly believed that what they were doing in the gym was going to help them outside in their day-to-day life, right? So, and I still think that way. And the reason why I'm doing this now is because I realized the amount of impact that I wasn't being able to make by not doing this, right? So I can impact, 125 different people and a coaching staff if I'm just running my own gym. But doing this now, I know that we can make a bigger impact. So I've kind of shifted my mindset on what my goals are in my life and what I want my legacy to really be about. And that's what's given me the desire to hop on the mic, teach you some of these things, and hopefully help you get to the next level, right? And obviously, we do this to kind of bring some awareness around our mentorship and hope that, some of you guys that are watching this will take that step and move forward towards working with us so that we can help you build your dream gym as well and impact more people and just get some more free time and flexibility back into your life, right? So let's dive into these 5 lessons today and just how they really kind of came about and how we fixed them, right? So they're always, it's like a problem leads into a solution, right? And one of our core values is to fail forward. So you always have to be ready to take a step, right? Taking action, because when you take action, you are going to kind of stumble on your face a little bit, right? And as you stumble on your face and you continue to grow, you start to evolve, and eventually you stop making the same mistakes. And, at the end of the day, you have to be realistic, knowing that you're just going to make different mistakes in the future, right? So it's like, hey, guess what? You don't just continue to grow and you get better and you stop making mistakes. It's just that you grow and the mistakes that you make are going to grow and the lessons that you learn are going to grow, right? So it's just this continuously evolving process that we're on, right? We're on this ladder of life and reaching our full potential. So number 1, all right, diving into number 1. I didn't know how to get members consistently. All right, so let's just start with that, because I think that's the majority of people's problem is that you open a gym. It's like the Field of Dreams. You ever hear of the Field of Dreams? It's a baseball movie where basically they build the field and they hope that all the people are going to come to play and to watch the game. And the reality is you can open up a gym, you can make a post about it, and doesn't mean you're going to get clients, right? And I see this all the time. I see people decide they're going to go online and do coaching, or they're going to start a training business, and they try and launch it with like a Facebook post, and it's just like, hey, I just started this business and I'm taking on 5 members. Who wants to join, right? And sometimes it works, but most of the time that's not going to be what's going to get you anyone. And you might get lucky in the beginning, but if you want to continuously grow consistently, you're going to have to really understand the process of getting them, right? I got lucky when I first started. The internet and Facebook was really starting to come out and get big. So when I was in Georgia in school, I was training people at the fitness center, and then so I was running a couple classes. I was doing an internship, and then I also had a personal training client. So early in the beginning, I was just filming a lot of the workouts that I was doing with people, and I was filming my journey of training. So I would film stuff that I was doing in my workouts. I would film me training clients, right? And posting stuff, right? So it was just early day organic content that I was providing just to kind of let people know that hey, I'm a trainer, I'm working with people. If you like what I'm doing, if you like my stuff, then hit me up, I'll work with you, right? So early on, that kind of worked for me, right? When I came home back to New Jersey, from school, I had a couple clients that, right off the bat, they wanted to give it a shot. They wanted to see what I was about. So early on, I started working with about 3 to 4 people back in Jersey, and I just continuously did that same process, right? So I would train them. And this is at this time, I was delivering newspapers. So I would go to sleep at 12 at night, right? Probably around 11 or 12. And then I would get up, and then I would drive a couple towns over to go bag up newspapers. And then from 3 a.m. to 6:30 a.m., I would be throwing newspapers all around the 3 towns that I lived in. And and then after I was done that, I would eat breakfast and I would start training my clients, right? So, and then this is how my day went. And then as I started to grow later on at night, I was having clients come over, right? So early on, I was just working round the clock, like a dog, right? Really just, putting in all that energy and effort into just trying to make it, right? Just making it out of the gate. So I would have a couple clients in the morning, and then I would have a couple clients in the evening, and then that's what I did. I would just film them, and I would share it, and then a couple people would message me, and they would hit me up and say, hey, I'm looking for a trainer as well. And some people would refer out, and I got lucky, and I had a couple clients who I started to go to their house, so I was starting to grow out of my parents' backyard, if you would. It was a shed that I used to work out when I was younger. But that's kind of how I started to grow the business, was I was just posting organically, and then I was getting new clients based on word of mouth, based on the performance that I was doing, right? So that's another thing. If you're not actually getting people results, it's going to be really hard for you to get more clients. So I didn't really focus so much on like how to get clients. I focused more on how to get the clients that I had results. And that's something that I've done over the 13 years, right? It was just really focused on getting results for people, because if you get results, everyone's going to see the change in them, and then they're going to want to know how to get those same results. Like that was just the base thinking of how I would grow in the beginning before I learned anything about marketing, right? So early on, I was going to people's houses, I was training in my yard, and we started to grow that. And eventually I had enough clients that I started I found it on Craigslist. A guy, he was advertising a studio where I could go and share some space with him and a couple other trainers. But the problem was when I moved, I lost some of my clients, so I was back at square one of trying to figure out how do I get new clients, right? But I just kept going with the whole Facebook approach. I just kept posting and posting and posting, and I will tell you guys, I look back at some of those posts and they're terrible. I was such a tool in those early days. But it's all I knew, and it's kind of how it worked, right? So that was one of the biggest mistakes that I've made. And then it was after how I fixed that was obviously joining in mentorships, right? And I remember the first time my coach like showed us a Facebook ad. He was just like, all right, we're going to like make this written post. You're going to write this, and then like you're going to find pictures. And I remember in the beginning we were just like finding it, like Facebook ads in the beginning was you write some post about your training program and you find like a couple hot girls and you put them on a picture. They were like fit hot girls, and it worked. Like it was actually bananas. Like there were so many people reaching out to come train that I was actually having difficulty getting them in. And so the funny thing was the first thing we learned was how to market, but no one ever taught us how to sell. So I would bring these people in and I had no idea how to sign them up. So that was like my next thing that I had to learn, was how to learn how to sell people into a program. But I got enough people, right? I sold enough people based on my terrible strategy sessions that I would run to be able to continuously start to grow my gym. And that was the early days, right? So I didn't know how to get my next client, and the first thing that actually started to deliver clients a little bit more on demand. So basically anytime I needed to get more clients, I'd go find some pictures of hot girls and I'd write a post about a 6-week or an 8-week program or 21-day, and clients would show up on our door. So that was the first lesson I had to learn, was that, hey, you're not going to get clients consistently if you're not marketing for them, right? Like you can grow your gym through word of mouth, you can grow it through referrals, but it's not going to be consistent each month. And so one of the first skills you're going to have to learn is how to actually market to get people to come in, right? So that's creating some type of advertisement that's going to get attention and draw people into come in and give your gym a shot, where you can deliver a service for them. And then the goal is obviously is to keep them as a client after that service is over, right? We call it a front end offer. So that was lesson number 1. How to get clients consistently. I had to learn the hard way that you can't just spray and pray with organic posts thinking that you're going to grow. And then after a while, I guess a bonus lesson on that is that the hot girl pictures, they didn't work as well when people started getting more sophisticated. So that's another lesson for you, is that marketing always changes. So you got to make sure that you're staying up with the trends so that you can know what's working and what's not working. All right, so number 2. I didn't know how to hire or develop a team. And I will say that I got really lucky. The first coach that I got was actually recommended to me from one of my members. It was a friend that she had that she grew up with, and she had a CSCS just like me. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. She like thinks the same way as me. She has the same certification. And so I brought her in, and she helped me out a lot. She was really good. I had her for about 3.5 years. So I was really spoiled because I didn't have to learn early on about building a team and growing your staff, because I was, blessed to have an actually really good coach. And there were some things that we would butt heads on because I didn't really set up any structure for her, right? So in the beginning, there was no structure. There was no, real accountability, and we started to run into problems early on because I didn't know what I was doing in that sense. So when it came to when she was ready to leave, this is when I really had to go through the growing pains of bringing in coaches, right? So in the beginning, I had no systems, I had no operation on like what we were going to do. I was like, all right, you're going to come in, you're going to run these workouts. All right, good luck, right? And that's not how you do it, right? People need to, in order to succeed, people need to have a plan. They need to have organization. They need to have systems. They need to have job responsibilities. And then you as a leader, you need to be able to hold them accountable, right? So early on, that was something that I learned in my mentorships as well, was like how to actually train your coaches, right? And everyone kind of did it differently. We did internships with some. We would then start to learn how to do posting on ad boards like Indeed or, ZipRecruiter type sites like that, or reaching out to schools to be able to bring people in. But then when they got in, we kept on running into that problem where, we would market to get a new coach when we needed a new coach, right? And that's probably the worst time that you could ever do it, because by that time, you're like burning out, right? You're coaching all the sessions, you're exhausted, and you're just hoping that somebody can come in and take some of the load off for you. And I would say that that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that I did make for years, was that I didn't have a plan on like when we should hire new coaches, and then I didn't have a clean process on like what to do once they were actually there. So that took me about 5, 6, 7 years to actually start to get good at it, and then actually starting, and then it's another couple years that it takes for you to actually get good at interviewing and finding the right prospect, right? So there's a lot that goes into hiring because people are really good at selling themselves, right? I would say that the best coaches are the worst at selling themselves in the interview, and then my worst coaches were the best at selling themselves, right? So I had to learn that you can't take everything at face value, and so we created like interview processes and checklists and tried to create filters to be able to make sure that we were getting quality people in there. But then you run into the problem where sometimes when you get quality people, like they move on to something else, right? So I would say that hiring coaches and training them and keeping them, that was probably one of the hardest things for me to have to learn over the time. But you still get, you're never going to be perfect at it. You just get better at it, but making sure that you actually have a process in place that you can follow. So that way, if you have the system, you can improve on different parts of the system, right? So once we got good at actually being able to post and get people to come in and interview them, then I started getting better at like actually training them on the job and helping them develop, right? So investing in your coaches. And that's why I always say, as a coach, when you come off the floor, a lot of people are like, okay, great, go at it, right? But no, like you're still going to be a coach, right? You're a coach for your coaches now. So you have to be just as invested in coaching them and mentoring them as your clients, so that you can actually help them help your clients be successful. So that was a hard lesson that I had to learn, was how to actually bring people in to get off of the floor so that I could focus on more of the business stuff, right? Now, number 3, how to outsource and delegate low ROI activities, right? So low return on investment activities like following up with people and like putting people into the system, or making sure that your leads are showing up to your strategy sessions, right? So a lot of these things you end up learning that you can fix them with automation, right? So there's like a lot of tools that can send out automated text messages and emails to make sure people are set up, right? If you get the right CRM system for your managing your gym, then you're going to be able to keep a thumb on the pulse of the gym, right? So being able to look over, are people showing up to your sessions? Are they getting checked in? How many sessions have they gone through? When you start to develop these, when you start to have software like that, it makes it a lot easier to delegate some of those easier things. But then, a lot of people would always say, hey, get an assistant, right? Or get your coaches and start. Those are things that your coaches should do. And that's things that your assistant should do, right? And I would always be kind of like, well, I can always do it, right? So that's where we get into this problem where when we don't have the skill set of being able to hand something off to someone, we always end up saying, well, I can probably do that, right? Or, it doesn't hurt for me to do that, right? So let me give you an example, like cleaning the bathrooms, right? Vacuuming the floors, wiping down the cubbies, right? making sure that members are hearing about a challenge, right? So internal marketing stuff, right? There's so many different things that are going to happen throughout the week. And if you're bogged down doing all of those things, usually you're just distracting yourself away from doing the things that are actually going to make the business grow. And I think that was the hard lesson that I had to learn, was that I didn't want to delegate because I had like this sense of pride, like, oh, it's my gym, I can do those things, right? Or like, no one ever cleans the way that I clean, so I'm going to go and clean, right? Or not wanting to hire someone to come in and clean, or pay a coach an extra hour to, clean up on a weekend or something, right? So we give ourselves all these excuses, but the reality is that we're not doing those things, or we are doing those things because they're easier, they're more comfortable to do than actually do things that are going to grow your business, right? Instead of, cleaning, maybe we should be writing a cleaning checklist, right? And making that system so that we can just hand it over to any coach, and any coach can do it and we can sign off on it. Whether it's like when you bring in a new member, we want to take and do every little part of the process. When if we have somebody who's like an admin and they know, all right, hey, we just signed up this person, here's their form, here's their their contact information, I need you to update this in the computer, I need you to set them up, I need you to book them for their sessions, and then I need you to make sure that they're getting booked for their next upcoming sessions as well, right? So if you have a system laid out where your assistant can come in and they're like, all right, here's the things I need to do. Here's my checklist. I got to book this client. I got to follow up with this lead, right? I need to make sure that we have this post in the Facebook group. A lot of times we just haven't really thought about what those things are and what we actually need. And we just stay busy, right? We just continuously give ourselves more busy work. And that just helps us furthermore avoid doing any of the real work that's going to help us grow. So I think that's one of the biggest ones, guys, is that, you have to learn this skill set of delegation, but you don't learn the skill of delegation until you have the mindset first that you're willing to let go of those things so that you can focus on more important things, right? Because I think a lot of times it's like, we have this mindset where like we don't deserve success, right? We don't deserve to not have to do those things, right? Because we think of like we're always a hard worker. We've always rolled up our sleeves. So like being the boss is really hard because we look, a lot of times people have a tendency to look down on that person as they were coming up in their workplace, right? We were like, oh, well, I don't want to be like that person, right? But the reality is that you have to, right? You have to give away these tasks, because who else is going to write like landing page copy? Who else is going to make sure that we're doing sales, but not just doing them, but actually having the energy and the bandwidth to do them well. I think that's one of, like, sometimes taking rest is like, oh my God, like, we look at it as a bad thing, but we need rest, because you can't show up and perform in a sale the way you need to do for that client to be able to walk and take that path forward with you the right way if you're not rested, right? If you're just like, dying because you've been training all morning, you didn't get a lot of sleep, and you're like trying to do all these tasks and clean and then get your workout in, and now you're trying to do a sale, you're not going to have the best sale. You're not going to have good strategy sessions, and your closing percentages are going to be low, right? Because you're not focused on the high ROI activities. So sales is probably one of the biggest ROI activities for you, and then also marketing to be able to get those sales in, right? So part of your responsibility to your team, like when you develop your team, is that you're actually doing those jobs, right? So there's jobs that everyone's going to have. Like for your coaches, their job is to deliver an exceptional experience to your members. Your job is to make sure that they are doing their job, but then also providing them with members to be able to be exceptional with, right? So we always look at it as like, there's two types of people, right? You step off the floor and you just don't do anything. And you let other people run the gym and you just check in every once in a while, right? Or, we give them that job and then we just find another bunch of like busy work jobs to do that are going to distract us from actually doing the things that we're responsible for, right? So we have to fully step into that role of the CEO, right? The head of the organization, and understand what our roles and responsibilities are, and then make sure that we're fulfilling them for our members, for our coaches, and being the best leader that we can. All right, guys, real quick, we're going to take a short little break. and we're going to bring you a quick little message here, and then we're going to come back with our last two. What's up, guys? If you have not yet downloaded, I am urging you to go into the show notes after this show, or right now, even just scroll down to it. Go into the description here in this episode if you're watching this on YouTube, and I want you to download my guide. Right? I put together this guide. It's the 7 biggest mistakes gym owners make and how to fix them before you burn out. This is also going to help you avoid the traps that quietly crush your profits and your passion, right? So if you want to make more money, if you want to make less mistakes, go into the description section, download the guide. It's 7 tips. It's a super easy PDF to go through, but it's going to be able to break down and teach you some awesome stuff. And then once you get that guide, you're also going to be on the email list where I'm going to be able to send you our weekly newsletter where I'm going to dive deep into different things that can help you grow your gym, grow as a leader, grow your team, improve your systems, you name it. That's what we're going to do. It's a deeper dive, so I invite you to step into my world where I can teach you a little bit more. But thank you also for checking out this podcast, and back to our episode. All right, we're back with number 4, right? So number 4 on the 5 things that I didn't know about running a gym and had to find out the hard way. And this one is going to be one that a lot of people do struggle with, right? I didn't know how to create a realistic plan for future growth. And what I mean is that, like, we all have an idea or a desire to grow, right? You could be like, okay, well, what do you want your gym to do in a year, right? So we come up with, like, an answer, like, oh, I want, 150 members, right? But then if you look at, like, how many members you're at, it's like March and you have 25. So that's what I mean by, like, coming up with a realistic one, because, like, that's what I would do, right? I'd be like, oh, I want it, like, my coach would ask me, like, what do you want to do this quarter? And I'd be like, I want to get 25 new members this quarter. And reality was that we didn't actually put the budget in place to be able to bring in 25 members. We didn't have, if we did bring in 25 members, we didn't have the structure behind it to actually make sure that they got a great service and that they stayed, right? So we also maybe didn't train enough of the team to make sure that they could handle some of those people coming in. So there was a lot of problems that there was no way we were going to be able to reach that goal, right? If I just say, oh, I want 150 members, but there's no real strategy behind actually getting there, it's not based on any realistic data, then you're just like hoping and wishing, right? So you can't run a gym or a successful business on hopes, prayers, and wishes, right? You actually have to have a strategic plan, and the way to get that strategic plan is to actually have some numbers, which we're going to talk about here shortly. I'm like already kind of ruining my last one, right? But one of the things and one of the keys to being able to have a realistic growth plan is that you have to base it off of what you're already capable of doing, right? So you need to look back, like what have I done in the last 90 days, right? So if I want to bring in 25 members, but in the last 90 days I've brought in 7, we have to analyze that. We have to look at, like, well, what activities did I do that led to those 7? And most of them probably were like, we didn't do anything, right? We kind of got 7 people by luck. We asked for a couple of referrals. We put up a Facebook post and some people came in, right? So when you get to a point when you understand how to grow, this is when it gets a little easier to actually create a realistic plan. But early on, I had no idea. People would ask me what I want to do, and I would just, give them a hope and a wish. This is what I want, and then I had no idea on how I was going to actually achieve that goal. So now, as I've grown in business and just like grown as myself, I've gotten a lot better, and I actually just taught this in one of our lessons. I believe it was actually one of our nutrition lessons for like the nutrition coaching clients that come through the program. It was talking about one lesson that I had to learn for my own success was that I had to start setting the bar a little bit lower for myself. I've been an athlete my whole life, and I've been super successful at setting the bar really high. And, for the most part, meeting those expectations that I would set for myself. And that's that has its own, I would say, like truth to that, right? Like an understanding. So if I'm an athlete, I've been an athlete my whole life, I kind of know who I am. I kind of know what I'm capable of doing, right? Because it's easy to judge like your physical capabilities, right? But if you've never ran a business and you're new to it, or maybe you've only been running it for about 4 or 5 years, you're still trying to learn yourself, right? You're still trying to learn what you're good at, what you're not good at. But when you're an athlete your whole life, it's easy to say, well, these are my goals that I want to achieve, because you already know what you're capable. You already know what kind of work you're going to put in. You already know what to expect out of yourself. So I think one of the biggest problems that I had when I went into business was that I was setting my goals with that athlete mindset, right? So I would set these really high expectations, and then I wouldn't meet my expectation, and it would crush me, right? And I would be like depressed. So then the next time I'm trying to jump into the next quarter, but I'm still spending time stuck in my head from taking those losses in the quarter before, right? So one thing that I realized is that momentum is created by small wins, right? And this is how I teach, and when I teach nutrition, right? When I'm coaching somebody on nutrition, my goal, like, we can give you how to do your macros, right? We can give you a calorie count. We can give you a structured meal plan. But if I give you all those things and you just go out and you fail on your face, you just fall flat on your face, right? You make it 2-3 days before you give up on tracking. You're just like, you just decide, I'm not eating this meal plan. I'm going to go order pizza, right? That's usually what happens when we start setting our goals and giving the expectations out at a more advanced level than where we're actually at. So when I coach my nutrition clients, I'm going to give them something really easy, right? When they first start out with me, I'm going to be like, I need you to go to the gym, 3 times. Can you do that? They're like, yes, great. I need you to drink water 3 times throughout the day. Can you do that for me? 3 bottles of water? Yeah, of course I can do that. I was like, great, awesome. Now I want you to eat protein at least one of your meals. So dinner, lunch, breakfast, whatever. I just want you to at least focus on hitting protein for one of those meals. Can you do that for me? And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay, great. So we got 3 workouts. We're going to drink water 3 times throughout the day, and we're going to eat protein at least one of our meals. Is that cool? And they're like, yes. Now they're skeptical because they don't think that's going to get them any results, right? They think it's too easy. But I know the little secret, right? Because we're talking about behavior change. So we meet again in a week and we chat. All right, so how did you do with those tests? How did you drink? Did you drink water? Yeah, I drank water. It was really easy. Actually, I drank a little bit more water than you said. Okay, awesome. What about protein? How did you do on the protein? It's like, I actually ate protein at every meal. It's like, okay, cool. And then what about your workouts? How many did you get? I got in 4 workouts this past week. And you're like, wow, that's really good. And you're like, yeah, I was really feeling good. I had a lot of energy. Maybe it was the protein and water, right? So they all of a sudden, they're coming back to you at the check-in with 3 wins, right? Now, how do you think someone feels when they hit those wins, right? They're stacking W's left and right. They're like, I'm hot shit, right? Coach gave me these things I needed to do, and I just straight up blew it out of the water, right? So why wouldn't, if we're going to coach our client, maybe some of you guys don't coach your clients like this, right? So maybe this is another reason to hop on, because we'll teach you how to do that, right? But what that client did was that I gave them some expectations and I gave them some tasks, and they were able to complete those. So there's a there's a reward that comes with that, right? So our brain is like, oh man, I'm really good at this. Like, I can do this. So that last part I just said, like, I can do this, right? So a lot of times when we're setting goals, it's about developing belief in ourselves, right? When we develop the belief in ourselves, then it makes it that we can take that up another notch and we can achieve more. So if I believe, if I set the goal for myself, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to get 150 members this year, right? I'm going to set it on a process, right? I'm going to be like, all right, so this month, I want to really focus on getting 10 to 15 leads, right? So what are the 3 activities that I can do that are going to help me actually get leads? I might say, all right, I can post each day on Facebook, right? I can go into the ads manager and I can create an ad, right? And then I can also, you know what? Let's try a referral challenge, right? Let's try to see if we can get members to give us referrals, right? Because my goal is to get 15 leads. So my mind's going to start to go to work on how I can actually achieve that task. So notice I'm not asking myself to be able to get 15 new members, because that would require more skills, more tasks to be able to make that happen. So if in that first month I focus on getting 15 leads, I can now reevaluate and see how I did at the end of that month. Great, you hit the goal. Maybe you get 20. Maybe you fell short. You had 10. What if I fall short? What more can I do? What other activities can I do that are going to help me reach that goal the next month, right? If you hit it, let's look at the thing that actually worked the most. Oh man, looks like this ad gave me the most leads, so I need to make sure I run an ad. So if we set our growth strategy based on smaller tasks in the beginning, right? Something kind of simple. Well, now we understand if I do these tasks, if I take these 3 steps, I can get these leads. Well, now we can actually move on to the next one, which is like, all right, I want to hit 7 sales, right? Because we already know how to get 15 leads. So I'm going to just duplicate that next month, and then I'm going to hit 7 sales, because that means I just need to be able to sell 50% of those 15 leads that come in, right? So now, because I understand how to get leads and I've already shown myself actual proof that I can do that, now I can set a new goal based on the next thing, right? All right, now I'm going to set a goal on 7 members, right? Okay, cool. We hit that. Now what do, right? The next month, it's like, all right, I want to do that again. Or maybe I want to do 10. So maybe you're like, all right, well, great. I got to get like some more leads then. I got to get 20 leads so I can get 10 new sales, right? Because I just sold at 50%. So part of growth and business growth and personal growth is that you start to learn who you are, what you're capable of doing based on information that's real in front of you, right? So I'm not going to say, all right, it would be unrealistic to set it at like, I'm going to go get 50 leads, but I haven't even learned how to get 15 leads, right? So I hope that's starting to make a little bit of sense, right? So part of being good with setting your goals is to understand that we need to lower our bar some. When we lower the bar and then we focus on executing that and doing that well, and we build some confidence in ourselves and some belief in ourselves, well, then we're going to have more conviction on the next goal because we actually know that we can do it, right? So if I'm running, say, a 40-yard dash and I've been able to consistently run a 4.6, right, it's realistic for me to say in the next 90 days, I want to get that 4.6 down to a 4.5. Right? Because there's a bunch of things that I can do. I can practice sprinting. I can lift more weights. I can, do some speed and agility drills to like better my actual, I guess you could say, capacity, right? Sprinting capacity, or my technique, right? Even better. So there's tasks that I can do that I can get my time down in a second in a 90-day span, which is really realistic, right? If I haven't been working on that. Now, most people know if you're a sprinting coach, it may be hard to get a second off of someone's time if they're a little bit more advanced. But if I haven't been working at it, then yeah, that's very realistic, right? So part of being able to predict your future growth is understanding who you are, what you're capable of doing, and then making sure that you're setting realistic goals that are a little bit smaller than you're comfortable with setting, right? So lower the bar. Build some conviction, build some confidence so that you can go forward and then you can move on to bigger and better things, right? So don't just set your goals at like, oh, this year we're going to grow by 100 members, but you've never even really actually grown by 10 while trying to do it, right? So that's a big lesson there for me. Hopefully that was a good one for you. All right, so this last one, all right? Last one is that I didn't understand gym numbers or how important they were for my business's success. All right, so I joked because I was teaching a lesson on our new, I guess you could say business dashboard, which is where we collect all of our information weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. And I was teaching this lesson saying how when I first started doing my numbers, I would just like put them on the back of an envelope. And that the biggest joke was that you could tell I wasn't really marketing because I could keep track on an envelope of everything that I needed to know. As I started to learn these new skills, however, I needed to start getting better, and I would have like these very fancy Excel sheets that I would try and do, and then information would just get lost in the Excel sheet and I wouldn't use it. So I had to get really good at creating something that I would actually use. And once I got used to being able to create something that I was able to use, I put information in, and that information really helped me make the right decisions, right? One of the things that I did was I would track my all the numbers that I thought I needed to know, because like I'm going to tell you in a second, I didn't know the numbers that I needed to know. But I would track it on an envelope, right? On the back of an envelope, and I would carry this thing around. My wife, she would die because she would see this. She's like, what is this? And I would just have a bunch of them. So like every week I would have a new envelope, and it would just be like names of like, members that were just joining, leads that were coming in, any like sales that I was hitting. I would start to like, just kind of like track it on an envelope, because that for me was easy. I had a lot of like Excel sheets, and like as I started working with coaches, they would teach us different systems and we would have Excel sheets, but a lot of them were very complicated for me, and I would then end up not wanting to use them because they were too complicated, right? So what I learned first was that number one, I needed a very easy to use member dashboard, or what I would say is like numbers dashboard, to be able to track all the information I needed to see. But the biggest lesson that you have to learn is like what numbers you actually need to track, right? So I'm going to ask you a question. If I told you I want you to spend $1,000 on ads this month, would you be confident that you're going to make money off of that? Right? Some people might say yes, some people might say no. Like, but are you confident that you know how much money you're going to make off of that? That's another question, right? See, those are two things right there. They're just two different levels, right? Like Meek Mill said, there's levels to this. So the first level is that you're not sure if you'll make money if you spend $1,000 or $250 a week, right? So how do we achieve that? Well, number one, we need to first understand what things we need to understand, right? That's kind of funny when I put it that way. All right, so the first thing we need to understand is like, when I run an ad, how many people is this ad going to get in front of, right? How many people are this ad going to get in front of? And then from those people that see my ad, how many people are going to click on that and go over to the website that I have built that's going to explain what the program is about, right? So those are two numbers, right? So first one is how many people are going to see it. The next one we need to learn is like how many people are going to click on it and go check it out. And then the next number we're going to need to know is like how many people that click on it to check it out give you their information, right? Their email, their name, their number. So from there, we're typically going to book an appointment. So now we need to know how many people that click on that, give you the information, actually book your appointment. And then how many of those people that actually show up to that appointment, right? So we call that our shows, and we get our show rate, which is a percentage of people who book and then show up. Now from there, we need to look at how many people that show up to an appointment are going to buy something. And then from there, we want to learn how many people that buy something buy again, right? So if they come in on a 21-day or 8-week or a 6-week or a 12-week, how many of those people are going to buy a longer-term membership with us? All right, once we start to understand these numbers, right, it makes it really fun, right? It makes it really easy as well. So we go back to number 4 about creating a realistic plan for the future growth. Well, when you start to understand your numbers and you start to see them, it makes it a little easier to be able to create a realistic plan for growth. So earlier I just said, if you had to spend $1,000, could you bring in people, right? Would you know if it works, right? So some people are going to say, I have no idea, because they haven't really looked at this stuff. And then some people are going to say, yes, I will bring in people. And there are some people that might be able to say, like, yeah, if you're really experienced, you might even be able to predict, yeah, for $1,000, I can go ahead and get, X amount of members, right? So that's the key, is that when we start tracking our numbers, we can see that when we spend $1,000, I'm going to get a certain amount of members for that amount of money. So say I get 10 new members that come in, right? That means that we're acquiring a customer for $100. So if I know for a fact that it costs me $100 to acquire a customer, am I willing to spend $1,000 a month on advertising? The answer should be yes. Because if we do that, right, if we just do that every single month, spend $1,000, we grow by 10 new members, at least buying the first initial product. And if we can convert 50% of those people, right? So say you convert half of those. So you get, at the end of that month, they go through a 21 day and 5 of them stay. That means at the end of the year, right? That means that we should grow by 60 new members, right? Not counting our churn, right? So members that leave our gym, but we should be able to grow by 60 new members by the end of the year going at that rate. Now, when we start to really understand our numbers, we're going to look at how many members are leaving your gym, right? So when you start to understand that, you're going to be like, okay, well, every month we lose a member. So that would mean that you're going to grow by 48 members over the next year if you're losing a member every single month, right? So we can start to look at future growth because we understand that when I spend $1,000, we're going to get 10 people to come in and buy our product, and 5 of those people are going to stay on long term. So now when you get ready to go back to number 4, which is like, all right, how do we create a realistic growth plan? Well, we can see, all right, well, here's my marketing budget. Here's what I can expect. And anytime we're underperforming, we could actually optimize that a little bit more, right? So we can spend more money, we can tweak our ad copy, we can improve our follow-up system, we can improve different elements of that process to be able to work towards hitting our goal, or even better, beating our goal, right? Because we shouldn't settle for 50%. We actually should want to be 60, 70% on both of those, right? Because that right there means that you actually grow how many members you have at the end of the year without really doing too much other work, right? So I think that would be for a whole nother podcast. But I think really what I wanted to talk about is that, like, when I first got into the gym business, I didn't even know any of that, right? I didn't know any of those things, those terms. I didn't understand marketing, right? I just told you that the first time I marketed, I put up a picture of a couple of hot girls, and we put up some stuff that we were running a program, and I just tried to get as many people in as I could, and I was like, oh snap, I'm making some money. I didn't even know how much I was making, right? Like that is to show you that, guys, like, you can start at the bare minimum of not knowing anything about what you're doing and still be successful, right? Because if you at least are willing to learn, and we talked about that in the beginning of this episode, is that, like, part of the growth is just understanding that you're not going to know anything, right? That you actually are kind of an idiot when you first get started, right? And that's okay, because if you're willing to grow, if you're willing to learn, you're going to start to learn all of these things. And then the more you start to learn these things, the better you get. And the better you get, the more you can grow, right? So if you have no idea about marketing, and then now you understand how much money you spend is going to get you an X amount of people, it's like you just unlocked a new life, a new code to life, right? You know now how to grow and get to certain points and hit goals so that you can actually make a bigger impact, right? Earlier I said $1,000, right? So if I'm like, 6 months in, and I'm like, you know what? We're doing really well with fulfillment. Like, we're getting these people in. Like, I want to, this next 6 months, these next 2 quarters, I want to double that, right? I want to double that. So how do we do that? Well, you can easily just spend additional $1,000 on those ads, right? Still do everything else the same, and you're going to hit that goal, right? So you're able to start being able to create growth and have realistic goal setting because you've just unlocked new skill sets that you didn't have before. Right? But here's the mindset that we have to understand. If you're not willing to outsource and delegate those small tasks that we talked about in number 3, you're never going to be able to focus on, like, understanding that chessboard of your numbers, right? Because I wasn't able to really grow until I put my team in place and really could just focus on marketing and selling people into my program, and then making sure I was there for my coaches to develop them and continue to help them grow. Right? But if you skip over step 2, which is actually developing your team, right? Well, now you can't grow because you got to constantly stop and go back and fix problems here. So part of being that, going from coach to CEO, is really understanding, like, what your responsibilities are, and being willing to fulfill them on a regular basis, right? So you have to get out of the mindset of, I'm going to train all my clients and that's the reason why they're going to stay. Like, that's not how you grow. Like, just trying to maintain what you have, that's not how you grow, right? The way that you grow is that you look at, developing a team that can do it almost as good as you, right? Because here's the truth. No one's ever going to do it like you. They're not going to have the same energy. They're not going to have the same passion, right? They're not going to care as much. But your goal as a leader is to be able to get them to get the most out of them, right? I remember Eric Thomas telling a story before. He talked about his aunt when he would go to his aunt's house, how she had like toothpaste, right? And like most people, they throw away the toothpaste at the end, and there's still a lot of toothpaste in there. And what she would do is she would have a clip and she would put it on there and she would roll this toothpaste up. She would roll it up and then she would squeeze it out and she would be able to get toothpaste out and they would be able to use it for, a couple, like 10, 15 more times than the average person would use it, right? So as a leader, as a coach, like, are we rolling it up on our coaches, right? Are we coming in there fired up with passion and excitement and wanting to bring out the best in them? Because what you're doing and when you're doing that is that you're leading by an example. If I show up and I'm energetic and I'm passionate about helping you grow, then they are seeing that this is the standard that they should be showing up for other people in your gym. So you don't have to worry about your customer experience and, are they getting the product? Because if you got them fired up, then they're going to be fired up for your people and your people are going to be fired up and they're going to tell people. So it's your job. One of your job responsibilities is to have energy and enthusiasm, to be that leader, to be excited every single day. Because if you're doing that, well, then it's going to trickle down to everybody else, right? So if you're bogging yourself down with vacuuming the floors and washing all the windows, like these are things that I did, right? Sometimes you got to wash the windows, okay? I'm not saying don't wash your windows, right? But if that's all you're focused on all the time is like, oh, is the floor vacuumed? Oh, did I wash the windows? Did I count how many waters are in the refrigerator, right? Like going and doing all these endless tasks, like you're not focused on understanding your numbers and developing your team, right? And then being able to show up with enthusiasm and excitement so that not only are you developing your team, but man, when you go to sit into a strategy session, man, you rock those strategy sessions and you get your sales in, right? Because if you're selling at 50%, well, guess what? If you have more enthusiasm, more conviction, more energy, you might start selling at 60 and 70%, right? And that has to do with getting rid of some of the stuff that's on your plate so you can have energy to show up and do the things that you actually need to do, right? So going from coach to CEO is really just kind of hyper focusing on the things that you need to focus on, and then learning from this podcast, right? Don't make the mistakes that I did, right? Or make them quickly and then learn how to not make them again, right? Because I'm not going to say you're not going to make these same mistakes. You're still going to go and do a lot of these stuff, right? But when you start doing stuff around the gym, right, or in the business, start asking yourself, like, could I hire somebody to do this for like $12, $15 an hour, right? And then sometimes we're like really cheap. We don't want to spend, a couple $100 a week for somebody to do this task. But instead, like, if we understand that, okay, well, if I spend $1,500 on ads, I'm going to get, 15 new people coming in the door, that should easily pay for me to have this person do these tasks for $200. That, like, those are the equations that we need to really be running. And this is why it's important to understand numbers, understand math, because if we're not really focused on that, we're not focused on our numbers, right, we're not going to be able to grow. We're not going to be able to reach our goals, right? Everybody only thinks about the last number is about like how much money is in your pocket or how much money is in your bank account. But I'm going to tell you something, man. You can't actually achieve any money in your pocket or money in your bank account until you start looking at these numbers. Because one of the biggest problems that I did was that even as I started to make more money, what did I do? I started spending more money, right? Because I wasn't focused on the numbers. I wasn't focused on what was coming in and what was going out, right? It just felt good. I was like, oh, we're growing, we're making money. Like I can treat myself a little bit. It's almost like our clients, right? When they start to lose weight, they want to celebrate by going out and eating, right? You're like, whoa, we just got results. Why are you eating, right? So it's the same concept, man. We can't expect growth to happen if we're not really being disciplined with the things that are actually going to drive our business forward and then help also drive ourselves forward in that leadership role. All right, guys, so that's all I got for you today. Make sure if you haven't, go check out our 7 Gym Owner Mistakes Guide. Download that, and it's going to dive into 7 ways to be able to really help fix your gym, or if you're getting ready to start a gym, to be able to know exactly what to do. Once again, I will catch you on the next episode. I am Coach Chris, and thank you for checking out the Coach to CEO podcast.